So today we're online with script doctor John Harris, who not only helps people repair their screenplays, but also works with writers to turn their books into screenplays and works with screenwriters to turn their screenplays into books, and also does ghostwriting where he helps people take stories they've made up or stories they've lived through and turn them into books and screenplays. So I think the best place to start is to have John spend a few minutes talking about how he became a writer and how he decided to work in the field of helping other writers bring their work to the marketplace. So would you like to talk about that for a few minutes, John?
Sure, Nancy, thanks a lot. I would say that I probably got started in writing right after college in the business world. I was writing user guides and documentation for businesses, things like that. Lots of copywriting. I did things such as deposition abstraction, which is kind of in the legal field where you take depositions from expert witnesses and summarize them, which was useful in teaching me how to do treatments and summaries for screenplays. Later, I got into writing my own stage plays and stories and produced and directed them in Hollywood. And then I started writing short films and full-length films for other people. First kinds of things I did were historical or action films. I guess after doing it for a number of years now, almost 10, just gotten really good at it. I've written many, many screenplays, so I've learned all kinds of tricks and techniques. Worked with a lot of really successful screenplay writers where I would just kind of come in and help them out, back them up, finish a project quickly for them because they had a meeting, that kind of thing. What interests me right now is turning books into screenplays, screenplays into books. There's not a lot of people doing that. There's a huge number of people writing books right now. I guess you could say it's kind of a publishing revolution of sorts with the internet and whatnot. It happened with music, it's happened with videos, it's happening with books. So I get all kinds of interesting, funny, and strange assignments. I don't take all of them. Some of them are just too extreme or weird or would be uncomfortable for me to work on. So try to be selective about it as well. So I don't get frustrated working with someone that I'm not going to produce good results for, that they're not going to be happy with what I write. So that has a lot to do with it too. I'm pretty picky about who I work with and make sure I have a good working relationship. And so far it's been great. I write about 4 or 5 full-length screenplays a month and a few short ones and other types of scripts too. So I write script pages every day, and I've gotten pretty fast at it too. So it's something I really enjoy doing. I look forward to working on new projects and meeting new people and helping people make their vision come true. I guess that's kind of the big rundown on where I came from.
Very cool. Can you talk for a few minutes about what kind of problems you as a script doctor can help screenwriters with a finished screenplay solve in their work?
A lot of times, the screenwriter might ask me to go through their screenplay and reduce the number of pages. The target length is 90 to 110 pages. So many times people have written a lot more than that, and perhaps they've had somebody look at it and they want to get it into a length that's more producible, that somebody that's in the industry is more likely to read and take seriously. So that's one thing I've done. Another thing I might do is the screenwriter may not have enough pages written. The first thing I might do in that case is look at the treatment or the original story or outline to see, first of all, if everything's addressed in the script. There's still things that need to be put in there. And if they've exhausted their basic story plan and they still don't have enough script pages, then we would probably go through a session or two of brainstorming some plot ideas for some new scenes and things that might happen in the script. And then I would add it to the script from there based on our agreement. Other things I might do with a script would be maybe somebody has read it and they don't particularly like the way the dialogue is or some of their detail of the script, or they want it scarier, or they want it spiced up, that kind of thing. So I'll go through and look at it scene by scene, line of dialogue one at a time, making changes so that it's closer to what people are ultimately looking for as a final product.
Very cool. So when you are working with people to doctor their screenplay, or you're working with somebody who has a real story they want to write down, or a story they've made up in their head that they want to turn into a screenplay. How do you help them develop the characters and the plot? Do you have specific techniques that you use to help people get the story that they want on the page?
Well, the first thing I always do is I ask to find out where they're at in the process. Some people are going to, have a nearly complete screenplay or a very long story or book written. Other people just have an idea or maybe a couple pages of notes. So, based on how much preparation material or background material they have, gives me an idea of how much work I have to do to put the initial story together. And I kind of explain that to people as well. If somebody's obviously spent years preparing something, that's going to be there's a lot more for me to work with. So if somebody hasn't really done that to a large degree, which is no problem, I still work a lot with people that haven't written anything down or who can't write at all. I might schedule some interviews with them where I would, think up some questions, kind of like we're doing here. Ask them to talk about something in great lengthy detail, probably way more than I'd ever actually use. And then maybe formulate an outline or a treatment from our conversations based on what it is they've told me they're looking for as a final product. That's an important question I ask. What do you imagine this looking like when you're done? Is there anything else you've seen, TV, movies, whatever, that reminds you of what you think this should be like? That's a huge question for me to ask people because that gives me a great big clue to what it is they want to see. Therefore, I'm not going to get sidetracked doing something they don't want. So anyway, interviews, they can send me notes, links, scribbles, you name it. I've gotten it in every kind of format there is. And basically, I just try to compile things the best I can into some kind of document that's going to outline what the script's going to be about. It could be a treatment, it could be something more like a script meant or some mixture of things, just so I can get an idea of what we're going to cover in the script. If it's a story, then obviously I would want to lay it out scene by scene in some kind of sequence, who the characters are, what they're doing, where they're at, what's happening in the story, actions of the characters, so on, before I get to the dialogue even, so that I can have an agreement with the author about what the main things are going to be in the script.
Do you think that skilled writers or people who have previously written books and screenplays will find, do they usually seem to find working with you makes the process of going from a raw script to a final script, or a raw book to a final book, faster, even though they might already be a good writer? Is there a way that you can help them accelerate their throughput, so that something, instead of taking six months, something takes 6 weeks?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I was worked in the corporate world, worked at Adobe, the software company, where I wrote user guides. And so, oftentimes I'd get a chapter assigned and they'd say, write a chapter on this and you've got this many days to do it and we'll be meeting with you twice a week to see how you're doing. So, once you're kind of in that mode of working, it's a lot easier because most writers, and some of them are really great, don't generally, work full time at it, or maybe they're not as disciplined at it and it takes years for them to create some output. But I think largely from working in the corporate world and now on the paid per job world, which I've been doing for a long time too, you have to really learn to discipline yourself and you have to learn to work at your craft every day. So the way I explain it to people when they bring me a project is, I work on writing every day, so I can have this done by this date. And first of all, for me to give them a deadline, they're totally thrilled.
Mhm.
Apparently, that's not too common. Uh, and then, I say too that I'm going to send you part of it or a third of it. When I have it done, you can take a look, make sure we're on the right track, and they like that too. So, once they feel like the project's going to be done efficiently and with a schedule, and they've looked at some of my work on whatever it is they want to do, they're usually pretty excited and things move forward pretty quickly and easily from there.
So you help people become more efficient at producing the work because you implement a time schedule and because you implement deadlines. In other words, you help them apply structure to the process so that something actually gets done in a speedy fashion instead of sort of over many, many weeks or many, many months.
Yeah,
So,
that's definitely true. I try to keep things on about a 4 to 6 week
mhm,
timetable for a script.
mhm,
That's a 90 to 110-minute script. That's pretty fast.
mhm,
And so that means I'm going to be producing a treatment in the first 7 to 10 days that the author is going to be really excited about, and then very quickly start working on the script.
mhm,
That's why I said at the beginning that I'm really selective about who I work with. If I know there's no way I'm going to be able to ever possibly do that, or it's going to take months and it's going to be all drawn out with lots of emails and phone calls, then it's probably not a project I would choose to do.
mhm. So, in other words, you basically expect the people that you're working with to be professional in the way that they approach this as well. Which if you send them
Absolutely.
if you send them a treatment,
Mhm.
if you take notes and you send them a treatment and they receive the treatment, you expect them to respond
Respond, read it.
swiftly
Yeah, sure.
to what needs to be
A couple of
changed
days,
in it and so
fine.
forth.
If I don't hear from them for weeks, then I'm going to assume that they're not really either they don't want to move forward or they don't have the money to move forward. That's the other big thing that happens is,
Mhm.
I'll give them a quote up front. The treatment is this much, screenplay is this much. I let them make payments a little bit, and not everybody's in a great position to, you know, pay a bunch of money to make a screenplay. So
Mhm.
I understand that. Sometimes people come back after 6 months and say, "Hey, can we work on this again?" Even though that wasn't the original plan.
Mhm.
But again, I try to work with people that I feel like are going to be able to take things to the goal line too.
Mhm. So do you have different pricing versus if somebody wants to pay you on retainer, which is to say they pay you everything up front?
I've had people pay me everything up front. I've had people pay me at least a minimum up front of some portion of it.
Mhm.
I would say if someone wants to pay me everything up front, I'm going to put their job as a higher priority simply because they paid me everything up front, and to me that means a lot.
Mhm.
The reason I'm saying that is because there's many times I have to work really hard to get a payment even after completing my work.
Well, usually what I do
So,
in that situation is I just say, look, here's the deal. It costs X if
mhm,
I have to X if you want to make payments, and you have to pay me this much up front and this much at checkpoints
yeah,
along the way,
exactly.
and if you don't pay me, then work just stops. The other set,
Right.
and if whereas if you pay me on retainer, I'll charge you 0.75 of X or point 0.5 of X, and I'll have these deadlines,
Mhm.
and if it turns out at some point in the process you don't like the quality of work and you want to cancel the project, I'll give you back the money that's left over from the retainer. But I'm not I can't I had an attorney who I had to work with one time, and we talked about going on retainer. And I said, "Well, everybody else in the world has to wait to get paid till after they've delivered services." And he goes, "Well, first, that's not true, and second of all, I can't get back my time. So the reason
Yeah.
that I work on retainer is because there's no way for me to retrieve the time that I invest in a project. And
Mhm.
so you have to pay me up front so that I'm not taking any risk by taking on your project." He says the other thing that happens is it's not fair. Like I'll work on your project, trusting you to pay me when the time comes, and then if you don't pay me, then I have to spend more hours tracking down to get money. So really you're making me work 3 times harder,
Yeah.
and I'm just not
You
up.
know,
He
I
goes,
haven't
I'm not up for that.
I really haven't had too many problems with that.
Mhm.
Usually, the problems I have had, honestly, has been when somebody like I've had this happen where there's been people that have like called and emailed me for weeks, wanting me to work on their project, and then I'll finally meet with them in person, even because they're so enthusiastic, and I'll work on it for them, and that you can I can just tell that they just maybe it's their dream, but it's really hard for them to pay for it, and they don't know how to do it themselves, and maybe they've really tried too, but it's just it's something very a distant kind of thing for them where they'd like to make a movie, but it's such a huge economic and creative challenge, and many times they just can't pay through the whole process. So, as you said, I usually get paid before up to like I paid at the beginning of a script. I'll get some of the money when I'm 50% done. I'll get more of it. So if they stop paying at some point, will still have been paid for everything I already completed.
Right. And I think that's a fair way to go. So, do you have sort of ballpark pricing that you give out you give out when people call you up, or does it really vary based upon I mean, I guess it has to vary based upon what you're doing, whether you're doing a screenplay from scratch or
Yeah,
you're editing a screenplay, or
exactly.
you're
Right.
converting a book to a screenplay, or you're converting a screenplay to a book.
Exactly. And a lot of times people don't really know how to describe to me where they're at in in the project either, especially if
Mhm.
they're not a professional writer and they don't know the terms for different things. They can tell me they wrote some things down and it's about 20 pages long. And then I see what I've learned is I have to ask them, is that single or double spaced? What size font is it? That kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because I've got, 20 pages that really, when you put it in a normal manuscript format, might only be three. So
Mhm.
um, the pricing depends on how much creative work I have to do versus editing and preparation of the existing story. So if somebody has a completed treatment, I'm probably not going to ask them to pay for me to redo their treatment. I might go through it with them. If someone doesn't have a treatment or they only have a rough idea or a short story or one page thing, I would usually charge anywhere, depending on what kind of project it is, whether it's a short film, whether it's a TV pilot, whether it's a full length movie, whether it's a TV series, anywhere from say 150 to 450 just for a treatment.
Mhm.
And that's going to be anywhere from say 5 pages to 35 pages long, depending on what type of project it is.
Mhm.
So I'm estimating how many pages of content and story am I going to need to write. If it's not very much, then it's not going to be as much money. For a script, for editing, depends on what I have to do. Simply me like putting into Final Draft or script format. Maybe they've got a bunch of script pages, but it's not up to standard. I might charge as little as $200 for that
Mhm.
because I'm estimating it's going to take me 4 to 8 hours. Four
Mhm.
to 8 hours, not 48 hours. Four to
Mhm.
8 hours to do it. So I'm estimating the amount of hours it's going to take me to edit a screenplay. If it's a real mess or if I have to add a bunch of pages, 10 or 20 pages, then it's going to be more than that because I have to, go through the treatment, figure out what the story is, figure out where we're going to add things to the story if necessary, that kind of thing. So it would be more expensive. If I'm writing a script, it depends on, again, the treatment, how far along that is. If I've already written a treatment for them, say I already did that process and I charge them 350, 450 for a treatment, then I'm going to write a script for them based on that treatment, and that's going to be anywhere from 750 to $1,500.
Mhm.
And again, that depends on the story. It depends on the type of movie it is. It depends on whether they're providing me with dialogue or I'm gonna have to come up with it on my own.
Mhm.
Um, some people, they might give me a book or a novel which has great dialogue in it all the way through. And all I
Mhm.
basically have to do is edit it while I'm reading it and typing it, put it into a good screenplay format. That's a pretty easy job. But if somebody, they have an idea of who their characters are, maybe I've got them to write out a character outline listing all their characters and some attributes to them. And I have to come up with all the dialogue and all the scenes. That's a lot more creative work. So I would charge on the higher end on that.
Mhm.
Make sense?
That makes sense. So so I guess when we're talking about you writing a screenplay pretty much based on from scratch or from a story, uh, you're acting in that case like a ghostwriter. Can you talk a little bit about what your ghostwriting agreement is and how you does the person
Mm-hmm.
that you give the screenplay to get the copyright to it and
Yeah,
so forth?
I I agree up front to do a work for hire and in exchange to get paid to do the screenplay, to do the writing. That's the exchange for me. I'm not taking points on the back end when it's made into a movie. I'm not taking, credit necessarily, although we did talk about I could take editor credit in some projects. So, with that in mind, I'm telling people, look, when this is completed, you're going to get all the credit for it. If you want to make something else out of it, you want to write a book or whatever, you're going to be able to do that. I'm not asking for credit. I'm not asking for anything like that, but you're going to pay me up front for my work, and that's the exchange. So it's a work for hire agreement as a ghostwriter, and I make that pretty clear up front. And people are pretty excited about that. Anyway, In a lot of cases, there's not. It's hard to make money doing for authors to make money anyway in publishing. So the fact that they know that they're going to control the creative product is something very comforting to many people.
Mhm. I think it is. I think it's important for people that want to be able to do something with the work when it's finished.
Right.
So,
You don't want to sit there and worry about who else was in the kitchen when you made your secret recipe, and so I think a lot of
right,
people worry about that now.
right, and you provide a non-disclosure agreement and all those kinds of
Yes.
things, so that so
Yes.
people can feel secure. Whatever they
That's
tell
right.
you is not going to go any farther.
Yeah.
It's very cool. So, if people are interested in working with you, do they contact you via telephone? Or, I mean, I think you have a website, don't you? Like
Yeah, I have a website, script Dr. John Harris, JONHARRIS.com. And on there, I've got a list of my services, my background. I've got a form you can fill out. My phone number's on there. And I also advertise in other places, Facebook, Craigslist, you name it. I talk with a lot of producers, directors, screenwriters that I already know from my own network too. So
mhm.
people sometimes call me just, because they know me now and they're like, I don't have time to do this. Can you help me? So I'm always building my network in whatever different ways I can with people that are producers, directors, actors, screenwriters, storytellers, you name it, whoever might be able to give me some work, I guess.
Mhm. That sounds really cool. I guess that pretty much covers all the topics that I think people most need to know about in order to work with you. And with your permission, I'll go ahead and turn this into a video. I'll probably create some slides to go along with the people that highlight what you're talking about, and then I'll go ahead and I'll send it over to you to approve. Does that sound like it's okay?
That sounds fine.
Excellent. Thanks a
Mhm.
lot, man. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.